my pleasure to welcome you to this side event this afternoon, or I can almost say this evening, here in the Aqua Bar tent on the topic of the African Development Bank and Italy's Mattei Plan, a shared path to the development of the continent. My name is Daniel Schroff. I'm the bank's Director for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, and I have the pleasure of facilitating, moderating this event. I would like to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I know it's been a long day, so we very much appreciate your availability this afternoon. We all know that the Mattei Plan was launched in January last year during the Italy-Africa Summit. And I have to say that it's a particularly encouraging sign to see the increased commitment of the Italian government towards Africa, particularly in a context where development aid resources are under particular pressure. So we very much welcome from the African Development Bank side these efforts, and we are delighted that the African Development Bank is a close partner in the delivery of the Mattei Plan. We will have this afternoon the opportunity to learn more about the objectives of the Mattei Plan, the realizations to date, but also the various financial instruments that have been set up in support of the Mattei Plan, including in partnership with the African Development Bank, such as the Rome Process / Mattei Plan Financing Facility, or a bilateral co-financing arrangement, the Growth and Resilience Platform for Africa, GRAF, and various other undertakings, really with the objective of fostering development to mutual benefit of both parties on the African continent. So without further ado, I would like to invite Lorenzo Ortona, who is the Deputy Coordinator of the mission structure for the Mattei Plan in the Office of the Prime Minister of Italy, to deliver some opening remarks. Lorenzo, please join us up here, and a big round of applause for Mr. Ortona.
Well, good evening to all, and it is really a great pleasure to be here today at the African Development Bank's annual meetings, a great honor, and allow me to extend my sincere thanks to President Adesina and the entire AFDB team for organizing this important side event, which remarks and underlines the deep and growing partnership between Italy and the African Development Bank towards the implementation of the Mattei Plan for Africa. Excellencies, thank you for being here tonight. Since the launch of the Italy-Africa Summit in January 2024, as was mentioned, the Mattei Plan has really evolved into a comprehensive framework for partnership with African nations. The Mattei Plan has redefined Italy's relationship with African nations on the basis of equal partnership and shared growth in a global context which is marked, unfortunately, by multiple crises that could have diverted attention from Africa. The plan has instead reaffirmed Italy's determination to keep Africa's needs and priorities at the forefront. The success of the Mattei Plan lies in its ability to build strong and effective international partnerships. In 2025, we have significantly advanced the internationalization of the plan, aligning it with global development strategies and expanding its reach way beyond Europe. I want to remind that a key milestone was the deepening of the cooperation with the European Union's Global Gateway. We held a joint meeting in Rome on March 27 at a high technical level, and with ministers from nations coming from the Lobito Corridor and with the African Development Bank. And we are looking ahead to preparing a leaders' summit on June 20th in Rome, co-chaired by Prime Minister Meloni and President von der Leyen, and that will mark an even further phase of synergies within the Mattei Plan and the Global Gateway framework. Beyond Europe, we have kept on engaging with many international partners, such as Gulf countries, recognizing their growing role and interest in Africa's development. In just over a year, as was mentioned, the plan has already delivered many tangible results, with a growing number of initiatives and projects either launched or entering in implementation. They include many projects from urban development in Ethiopia to agro-industrial hubs in Mozambique, to renewable energy training in Morocco, to education, health, and agricultural projects in Ivory Coast, to agricultural and energy projects in the Republic of Congo, two projects of Lobito that was mentioned in Angola, and sustainable agriculture. We are funding as well multifunctional training centers in Algeria on agriculture and in Tunisia. One of the most important results of this first year was as well involving the Italian private sector in reaching these goals. And under the Mattei plan, with the private sector, Italy is playing as well a key role in the Lobito corridor that I mentioned before, with a financial contribution of $320 million as a first financial contribution. So the plan has had an initial funding of 5.5 billion euros in grants, loans, and guarantees. Its cornerstone is the Italian Climate Fund, which destines 70% of its resources to Africa, and is complemented by additional resources from Italy's development cooperation, and as I said, with the involvement of the private sector. To build a solid financial architecture, we have, in this context, collaborated with the African Development Bank in ensuring the necessary financial and technical support. And I really appreciate the African Development Bank for the tremendous effort it has put in this last year in working together with us in establishing innovative financial instruments that I'm sure this evening we will go more further. As has been recalled, I just want to, in particular, highlight the new Mattei Plan and Rome Process Multi-Donor Special Fund. It is a fund that targets high-impact and climate-aligned investments in support of sovereign sector projects in Africa. And just on May 12th, the fund held its inaugural governance meeting, during which quite a robust pipeline of projects was presented. And we are also pleased to highlight that in this fund, the collaboration with the United Arab Emirates, with the financial support to help scale the fund's capacity, has obviously been very appreciated. We strongly encourage the participation of additional international partners to further enhance the fund's ability to finance large-scale transformative projects across the continent. We has well built with the African Development Bank and Italy-Africa co-financing and trust fund framework arrangement, which is now being implemented in these days, and has been mentioned with Cassa Depositi e Prestiti. GRAF is another instrument for the private sector that we've built. This is just to say that the Mattei Plan was an opportunity for us to build new financial instruments and to leverage the initial funding that we had to have an even stronger impact. And we believe that in the course of 2025 and in 2026, this impact will be even stronger. And we're very pleased to have a partner like the African Development Bank in this endeavor. We have worked as well with other partners. I want to recall, of course, the World Bank. There's been a strong collaboration, strategic partnership with them as well, and we have increased, I would like to recall and announce at the spring meeting, our contribution to the International Development Association, the IDA, by 25%, committing more than 733 million euros in support of low-income African countries. In conclusion, I want to say that I think that Italy is a committed partner in many, many endeavors with the African Development Bank, is a committed partner in projects like Mission 300, the ambitious program led by the World Bank and the African Development Bank to provide access to energy for more than 300 million people in Africa by 2030. We are very committed on this project. Through the Italian Climate Fund, we are co-financing operations under this initiative. And additionally, Italy supports the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, the AGIA, which aims to accelerate the development of sustainable infrastructure across the continent, always with African Development Bank, together with our partners. So the Mattei Plan is much more than a strategy. It is a long-term commitment to build a future of shared prosperity between Italy, Europe, and Africa. And as we move forward, we are determined to scale up our efforts, deepen our alliances, and deliver lasting impact on the ground. We are proud to walk this path together with the African Development Bank and our partners. I thank you.
Thank you very much for those remarks, and it is quite impressive, sort of the array of instruments of support that Italy has been mobilizing, working with the African Development Bank and other partners in support of development on the African continent. And I very much liked what you said at the outset, that this is an equal partnership for shared benefit. It's now my pleasure to invite my colleague Gauthier Boulard, who's the bank's Senior Director for Resource Mobilization and Partnerships, to deliver some brief opening remarks on behalf of the African Development Bank. Gauthier.
Excellencies, Mr. Minister, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's really my pleasure to be here tonight to celebrate and recognize the strong partnership that has been established between the African Development Bank Group and Italy in the context of the Mattei Plan and, of course, the Rome process that is behind this. This partnership is covering a range of activities and instruments, financing instruments, that we have put in place together with Italy, with CDP, with other partners from the Italian government. And of course, the plan is fully aligned with the bank, the African Development Bank Group's strategic priorities. I could mention a few of them, but at least Italy, as the reaffirmation of the banks as its main partner, underscores the bank's track record, financial credibility, and local knowledge across the continent. We definitely welcome the establishment of the Mattei Plan Financing Facility, the RPFF, as a special fund hosted by the bank. And this is, of course, a bold and timely instrument to address the root cause of migration and support climate-resilient infrastructure. The fund leading on the Mattei Plan agreement was approved by our Board of Governors on the 11th of February. So that was one first step in the implementation of the fund. Very good progress made already, and that was very well described by Mr. Ortona just before me. The fund now, the special fund now, is fully operational under the bank's management, coordinated within the bank. So that's very good news. Italy's contribution of 100 million euro combining concessional loans and technical assistance is a strong demonstration of commitment to climate-aligned commitment and development. So that's a very good progress. We, of course, have been very happy to hear that some other partners would contribute as well. Mr. Ortona just mentioned a few of them. We have the UK, UAE that could have announced contributions, so that's, of course, very good news. Also, in the list of good news that I'm coming to communicate to you today, on the governance aspect and the work plan for the implementation of the facility, of course, our objective together with Italy was to accelerate the implementation of the facility and the financing instruments. So the first governing council of the facility took place on the 12th of May this year, so it was quite recent, but that was an opportunity for the governing council to look at the work plan for the facility, and after the implementation phase, we are already starting by addressing the first projects that are coming soon. So we have identified a list of projects in the energy sector, some investment in renewable energy generation, grid extension, rural electrification, transport infrastructure, roads, irrigation systems to improve regional integration. Water sanitation, of course, is an important sector as well to address and to facilitate access for vulnerable communities and building climate resilient. So the facility will also support institutional reform and capacity building for the government that will benefit from the financing to ensure long-term impact and ownership. So this is really a partnership that is, we can call it a trilateral partnership. We will partner, the bank as partner with Italy, and we of course partner with beneficiary countries, African countries. So that's a co-benefit partnership, definitely we can say that. Mr. Ortona has rightly pointed out the the implication of the private sector. These partnerships and the success of this kind of partnership cannot go without a strong role for the private sector. There is, of course, a large space for private sector investment, and this plan will create opportunities for private sector, of course, from private companies from Italy, but from anywhere else, including from Africa. And that's why, in partnership with the Italy's Casa Depositi and Prestiti, CDP, the bank has launched the GRAF facility. In fact, the Growth for Resilience platform, called the GRAF, to catalyze private sector development across Africa. With a target envelope of 400 million euro, GRAF, this platform to attract private sector, will deploy private equity and catalytic capital to scale up SMEs, especially in priority sector like agribusiness, green industry, and digital digital transformation. GRAF is seen by the bank as a blended finance model and risk-sharing instruments between DFIs in Africa and outside Africa, and of course private investors. So that will really attract private investors to facilitate the access by blending finance, so affordable terms, and de-risking instrument as well. Last part of the instrument of the facility is Italy's Africa co-financing facility. So that's another component of the Mattei plan that we have put in place together with Italy, with the government of Italy. This is so-called the Italy Africa co-financing facility, combining 100 million euro in loans, 40 million in grants, and 2 million in technical assistance to facilitate the preparation of project and other things, and facilitate the design of the co-financing agreement. So the facility will co-finance the African Development Bank Group sovereign and sovereign guaranteed operation in agribusiness again, energy, environment, industrialization. So that's a very good orientation that we will support through this partnership as well. This is a real shift from traditional aid to co-investment strategic sectors that generate jobs. Of course, jobs creation is at the very center of our priority at the bank, but also of Italy, and that will address the migration issues and other things. So the job creation will be very important as a target and an objective to the plan. And of course, we will accelerate structural transformation through those investments. So that's a very important partnership that we have put in place with the bank and the government in Italy. There is quite some win here that I'm losing my sheet, but just to tell you at the end of just before wrapping up, I just wanted to mention something that echo to what Mr. Otona has mentioned. He mentioned the support that the government of Italy has provided to the International Development Association. We also have something similar, which is the African Development Fund, a concessional window of the bank group. We have launched the negotiation for the 17th replenishment of the fund this year. So we are discussing with partners, including Italy, of course, to replenish the fund. This is a fund that will support African low-income countries and fragile states with low capacity. So those countries will need and still need affordable money from the bank and from partners, despite the challenging environment that we know with ODA, the official development assistance that is going down for good or less good reason, but at least, of course, we know that African countries will have to start implementing a more endogenous development cycle based on private sector, domestic resource mobilization, and many other things. The Mattei plan is really the good instrument to that regard. We have very strong projects that have been identified that will benefit from financing or co-financing from the government of Italy and the bank. And with this African Development Fund replenishment that we expect to be as significant as possible or successful, we will be able to ensure more projects to be financed and benefit from financing with concessional terms, in the context also of the Matei plan, the co-financing facilities, and also attracting, or at least putting the right foundation to attract private sector investment. So let me conclude. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. The African Development Bank stands ready to work with Italy and the Matei plan, the RPPF facility, to partner and deliver transformational results. Together we can build resilient, green, inclusive economies in Africa that give every African the opportunity to thrive and contribute to a more stable and prosperous world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gauthier, for those remarks. Indeed, highlighting again the multifaceted cooperation that we have with Italy, but I think it's also important that you highlighted at the end, of course, the importance of the African Development Fund and the replenishment discussions that are ongoing in the context of ADF 17. It's now my pleasure to invite a very distinguished panel of speakers to come to the floor. I would first of all like to invite His Excellency Ludovic Ngatse, the Minister of Economy and Planning of the Republic of Congo. Monsieur le Ministre, si vous pouvez venir nous joindre. I'd also like to invite the Minister of Economy and Planning of Angola, His Excellency Victor Hugo Guilherme, to join us here up front. Next, I would like to invite our dear friend and colleague who's sort of the bridge between Italy and the African Development Bank, Domenico Fanizza, Executive Director for Italy, the United Kingdom and the Netherlands. I'm also very pleased to see a good friend, Judith Almagro, who's the Head of Development Financing at CDP. And last but not least, I would like to ask also Lorenzo Ortona, who we heard from, to join us here as well for the panel. No, thank you very much, gentlemen. I think we don't have a very gender-balanced panel. That's probably something to work on, but I'm pleased that the alternate governor of Italy has also joined us and will close this meeting later on. May that as it be. I would like to start the conversation by getting a perspective from African countries. Et premièrement, vraiment encore féliciter le ministre de la République du Congo de nous joindre cet après-midi. Du côté du Congo, qui est un des pays prioritaires du plan Matei, que voyez-vous comme les avantages de ce partenariat? Quels sont les bénéfices pour le Congo? Quelles sont les opportunités également dans les différents secteurs? Donc on aimerait bien avoir une perspective du côté de la République du Congo par rapport à cette coopération dans le contexte du plan Matei. Vous avez la parole, Monsieur le Ministre.
Merci beaucoup. Merci de nous avoir associés à cet événement. J'aimerais remercier surtout les autorités ivoiriennes de l'opportunité, de l'accueil et de tout ce qui a été fait depuis hier. Je veux surtout remercier la première ministre de l'Italie, Madame Meloni, pour son leadership, parce que, comme vous le savez, pour notre pays, c'est vraiment une des premières ministres qui a rencontré le plus notre président en si peu de temps. Je pense que c'est sur les 12 derniers mois, c'est peut-être 2 fois qu'elle a rencontré le président. Et donc, il est tout à fait normal que le Congo ait fait partie en fait, du premier lot des pays africains qui vont bénéficier de ce merveilleux plan qu'est le plan Matei. Je veux surtout féliciter l'Italie pour son leadership général et surtout pour la grande attention maintenant accordée à l'Afrique, parce que je puis constater que c'est une nouveauté. C'est vrai qu'il y avait de la coopération entre l'Italie et l'Afrique, mais là c'est très massif et c'est très très important. Pour revenir donc à notre pays qui est le Congo, nous avons accueilli cette initiative avec beaucoup d'attention et beaucoup d'entrain, surtout que cette initiative arrive à point parce que on a de gros besoins qu'on doit financer. Comme vous le savez, nous avons donc un plan national de développement 2022-2026. On est en train de préparer un autre sur la période suivante, 2027-2028. Et parmi les secteurs prioritaires qui ont été arrêtés dans le plan national de développement 2022-2026, il y a principalement donc l'agriculture, parce que comme vous le savez, le Congo fait malheureusement partie de pays pétroliers, mais qui n'ont pas assez développé les autres secteurs économiques autres que le pétrole. Donc on importe beaucoup, on importe en milliards de francs CFA, c'est environ 800 milliards, ça fait à peu près 1,5 milliard d'euros, ce qui est important pour un si petit pays de 6 millions d'habitants. Et donc, dans notre plan national de développement, l'agriculture fait partie vraiment des secteurs prioritaires. Mais avec le plan Mattei aussi, nous allons développer la transformation de notre secteur énergétique. Nous constatons que malgré les réformes qui ont été initiées, qui consistent en fait à appliquer un plan, enfin disons le cours de l'électricité qui fait qu'on aura d'une part la production, le transport et la commercialisation ainsi que la distribution. Ben, on a besoin de beaucoup d'investissements pour rendre ce code faisable. Et en particulier, on a beaucoup de difficultés dans le transport. Vous savez, le Congo, c'est un pays qui est un peu allongé sur le continent. Donc, on a le sud, le nord, du nord au sud, c'est à peu près 2000 km. Et il est très difficile de transporter l'électricité sur toute l'étendue du territoire avec les difficultés géographiques, parce qu'on est au cœur de l'Afrique centrale, on est au cœur de l'équateur, de la grande forêt équatoriale, bassin du Congo. Donc, on a besoin de beaucoup d'investissements. Et donc, ce plan arrive à point nommé. Notre pays fait partie des pays de l'initiative Africa 300. Et nous sommes en train de développer un plan, un compact, c'est-à-dire un plan de développement d'électricité dans lequel les financements que le plan Mattei met en place viendront se joindre aux autres partenaires qui vont financer ce plan Africa 300 pour le Congo, donc la Banque africaine de développement, mais aussi la Banque mondiale. Voilà, en gros, pour le secteur agricole, c'est aider en fait, travailler avec des producteurs, c'est créer vraiment des chaînes de valeur conséquentes qui vont de la production, la commercialisation et surtout développer l'export. C'est vraiment ce que va permettre le plan Mattei et c'est très, très important pour notre pays. Nous accordons beaucoup, beaucoup, beaucoup d'attention à la mise en œuvre de ce plan. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Ministre, pour cette intervention. And thank you in particular for highlighting that it's really a game changer in terms of the sort of collaboration between Italy and Africa, but also for highlighting some of the concrete priorities of the Congolese government, particularly in the sectors of agriculture and energy. And I'm also pleased that you made reference to Mission 300 and the development of the energy compact that is currently ongoing, which we hope will be presented publicly in the margins of the UN General Assembly later this year. Let me turn to Angola, and I think, Honourable Minister, a reference was also made a couple of times already to, I think, a very emblematic project where Angola is really at the center. It's more than a project, it's really a corridor, a program, the Lobito Corridor. Maybe you could sort of share your perspective, A, on the importance of the Mattei Plan, Angola's interest, but also sort of how the cooperation in the context of the Mattei Plan can help with implementing a program such as the Lobito Corridor.
Ok, merci. Je vais parler en français aussi.
Oui, oui, en français, pas de
oui,
problème.
Oui. Okay. Je vous remercie pour cette invitation dans cette panel-là. Je remercie au gouvernement d'Italie pour inclure Angola dans le plan Mattei, parce que pour nous, le plan Mattei représente une décision stratégique alignée à notre objectif dans notre plan national de développement 2023-2027. L'Angola considère cette initiative comme une opportunité concrète d'accélérer notre développement économique et social à travers d'un partenariat basé sur les bénéfices mutuels et la valorisation des priorités nationales. En cours de cette logique, se trouve la nécessité de l'Angola diversifier son économie, de réduire la dépendance au pétrole. Il savait presque 70% de notre revenu vient du pétrole. On veut diversifier notre économie parce que nous avons tous qu'un pays qui veut se développer, il y a. Nous avons une population très jeune. Nous avons beaucoup de cours de l'eau. Nous avons, comme dirait aujourd'hui dans le premier panel, le ministre du Niger, nous avons beaucoup de soleil. Et enfin, nous n'avons pas l'argent. C'est pour cela que la participation dans le plan Mattei, c'est très important pour nous. Le plan Mattei, pour nous, offre un accès aux investissements et la technologique. Il y a encore la coopération avec les institutions multilatérales. Ici, on a parlé de la Banque africaine et aussi la coopération avec les autres pays européens. Comme j'avais dit, l'Angola a une population jeune et investit massivement dans la formation technique et professionnelle, la création de l'emploi et le développement des talents nationaux. Le partenariat avec l'Italie facilite la création de centres de formation parce que le taux d'emploi en Angola, dans ce moment, c'est comme 60%. Et ça veut dire que presque 30% des personnes n'ont pas d'emploi. Et ça, sont les gens jeunes. Et pour cela, on fait notre priorité, c'est l'agriculture. Comme au Congo, je pense, comme à quelque part en Afrique. L'agriculture, pourquoi l'agriculture? Parce que l'agriculture peut amener les jeunes, ils donnent les travaux. Dans ce moment, la production agricole de l'Angola, ça fait avec les familles. Plus que 50% de la production agricole, qu'est-ce qu'on mange dans notre tableau, c'est fait pour les familles agricoles. C'est pour ça là, mais en agriculture, on a besoin de la nouvelle technologie pour augmenter la productivité. Et c'est ça que je pense le premier pas en Angola pour le plan Mattei peut être dans un projet agricole qu'on a fait avec la Banque africaine de développement. Et on pense que c'est une bonne opportunité de commencer le plan Mattei dans cette manière. Un autre accès essentiel, c'est le renforcement de l'intégration régionale. Comme avait dit le ministre de l'économie du Congo, nous avons aussi comme un secteur prioritaire. Ce n'est pas seulement pour l'Angola, mais pour la région, pour l'Afrique, c'est les projets d'énergie, les projets de transport, des routes et des chemins de fer sont de notre priorité. Je pense que nous avons beaucoup de besoins au pays. Notre ministère fait le travail avec l'autre bailleur de fonds, fait la coordination parce que chaque dollar que chaque donneur donateur mis en Angola peut être multiplié pour plusieurs de familles. Je pense que je peux parler en bref. L'Angola veut le plan de matière comme enlevé pour accélérer notre industrialisation, qualifier la jeunesse, moderniser notre économie et consolider le rôle d'acteur régional stable. Je pense qu'il s'agit d'un partenaire stratégique, comme j'avais dit au début, qui contribue de manière concrète à transformer la vision de notre plan de développement national. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Ministre. Vraiment important de souligner ce partenariat stratégique, l'importance de diversification de l'économie, un peu pareil comme le cas du Congo également, mais aussi de mettre l'accent sur la formation, en fait de améliorer la situation pour les jeunes notamment, qui sont en fait le futur en fait du Congo. Donc, et le plan Matei peut vraiment soutenir ce développement. Donc, let me maybe turn back to the Italian side. I think we've heard from two countries that are core partners of the Matei plan. And maybe Lorenzo, I'm going to bring you back in because you alluded to it briefly in your opening remarks that while it's an initiative driven from Italy, it's a partnership and you're collaborating with others. You mentioned the global gateway of the European Union. You mentioned the United Arab Emirates, just to highlight that the UAE contributed, and we have in fact just received the transfer of $25 million into the special fund, the Rome process / Matei and financing facility. So it's led by Italy, but it's broader than Italy. Maybe you can sort of explore a little bit sort of this aspect of partnership. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. And it was actually a great pleasure for me to listen to their excellencies and their intervention. And it always pushes us even more to work together and to work better. And I can assure you that for Prime Minister Meloni, it is really on top of her agenda as the #1 priority. Just a quick remark on the comments that were made. I fully find myself aligned with the Minister of the Republic of Congo regarding the sectors. And actually, I had the honor to participate in the bilateral meetings between Prime Minister Meloni and President Sassou Nguesso, and exactly the priorities that were shared were water, agriculture, sustainable agriculture, and electrification and energy as the most present and more important needs to work together. And I can say we are working together on all three, and that's what we have been doing. And on agriculture, it's an interesting example. I just want to bring it up because in a way it addresses as well what the Minister of Angola was saying about how to really bring the best technology, cutting-edge technology, and work on agriculture. So we are supporting this formula. We're working with the private sector. African Development Bank knows very well with Bonifiche Ferraresi, which is an important agricultural company. It's actually listed in the stock exchange, but it's working with us. So it's public and private money together, trying to bring the best of Italian know-how from different companies of the agricultural lane. And we have already started working in Congo. It's actually moving very quickly. And it's in this case, it's always a concession of land. This is important to say, for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, according to what the country is interested in. And they build this sort of model farms that can really do a lot of training, which was another point that was brought forward by both ministers, and really as well leave the cement that can resist in those particular context and different areas. And this is a kind of solution that we have found as well in Algeria, in Ghana, in Senegal, and we're working very much and very quickly to deliver as much as possible. In Algeria, for example, it's almost 40,000 hectares of concession of land and desert land, and instead in Congo it is already 10,000 hectares. So it's going very quickly, and I hope we will be able to do the same and find the same common interests in Angola, exactly for sustainable agriculture. On water, we're working on a very complex project on water in Brazzaville, and then we are working on Energy Mission 300 was just mentioned. We are working, it's in the pipeline of the Matei plan financial facility. So it is exactly the sector where we're concentrating our strengths. On Angola, we are so happy to have you as a partner since the start of 2025. We believe, there's a lot to grow in our partnership. Definitely, Lobito was sort of the big reason that brought us together. And Lobito means as well agriculture. Lobito means as well digital connection. It means many things that we would like to do together. It means ports. It means Italian private sector coming into Angola on all these different infrastructure, working together. And agriculture is definitely one of the sectors and training that we brought home in our conversations with you. So we're very eager to work together. Finally, to come back to your last question, I think that in order to reach all these ambitious goals, we need to work with partners, but we need to have a very clear strategy. So this is what we're trying to do. This is what we've been doing. We've been talking as partners with our friends, seeing what are their needs, what we can do together, how we can grow together, and then we try to share this with our international partners, the African Development Bank, with which we've been working very, very well, with the World Bank leveraging the funds and trying to reach those goals, and with partners like the EAU or UK that has been mentioned that are very eager to work together and collaborate on these projects. So I think it's the way forward, it's the way we have to continue to work, and we're ready to do so. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and it's really encouraging to see all the work that is already ongoing and sort of the strategic partnerships that are being formed. Let me bring in Domenico, our executive director. And Domenico, maybe one point that I would like sort of to ask you is around sort of this, also on the Italian side, this one kind of government approach, because it is quite impressive that you have a variety of governments, the ministries, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you have the Matei Plan special team, sort of really trying to have everyone aligned around the vision of the Matei Plan, sort of how is sort of this helping, and maybe you can also elaborate a little bit around how we can bring in additional partners sort of to support this. You're also the executive director in charge of the United Kingdom and Netherlands.
Merci beaucoup, Daniel, pour m'avoir donné la parole et pour cette très intéressante question. Mais auparavant, je voudrais remercier leur Excellence, le ministre Ludovic Nangazze et il ministre Victor Hugo Guglielme pour leur observation et pour avoir donné le point de vue des pays qui pour nous c'est très essentiel. C'est vraiment très utile. Avant de répondre à les questions que Daniel a posées, qui sont très intéressantes, je voulais faire une remarque un peu plus générale, mais je vais parler en anglais maintenant. Je vais parler en anglais maintenant. Je vais parler en anglais, je continue à parler en français. C'est la vieillesse. Quand même, okay, so let me say what is important in the Matei Plan approach. Why do we present it not just as a way to cooperate, but a completely different model? A model which is different from what we have done business in the past. the way in which multilateral, les bailleurs de fonds, donors, have done it. The important thing is that this is not aid to development. It's something completely different. The idea comes out from the conviction that Europe and Italy have no future. Look, I'm not talking only economic future, but also social future without a partnership with Africa. And vice versa, Africa cannot transform itself without tapping resources and savings that are in Europe and in Italy. So this is a mutual beneficial relationship. We are not here because we are good Christians. We are also, and we like it. Why we are here to make for business. No? It's not that we come to support. No, we want to grow together because we have understood that, for instance, Italy cannot live without Africans in the country. And we see Africa not as a place where get raw materials to transform abroad. But we see Africa as a market where we want to sell goods, and for that reason, we are interested that the consumers have the capacity to buy. And that's the commitment. And that's a completely different approach. And this is, I call it, in a sense, pre-science, in the sense that this has come up with some reason, also because this science, the problem of the traditional approach to aid and development were in crisis. They have come up before the big changes in the geopolitical schemes. And why is that important? Because here, with that, with new approach, and particularly the way in which we deal with bilateral and multilateral relations, it's an alternative to what we see now, that we have a skepticism from some important shareholders in our membership, in the membership of the banker, toward a multilateral approach. This instead shows that the multilateral approach and the bilateral are not in conflict. Actually, they have to move together, to work, and they are self-reinforcing. No? So saying, oh, let's go back to the old world where we do the aid, where everything was sure, does not help now. We want to create business opportunity for investment. And that's, I think, what is important. And in a sense, also for the bank itself, the Mattei Plan is a model that could be followed to reinforce its capacity to generate resources and impact in a quickly changing international environment. So that's the other important thing is that I would say the Mattei Plan so far has focused mainly on initiatives with sovereign actors. We have, and Giulio is going to talk about that, we have GRAF that it's toward the private sector. Now that we are put in place the structure for doing the sovereign, also we want to do enhanced cooperation with the bank on the private sector along the lines that Lorenzo was mentioning before, because we see that the sovereign investment are no way, they are not going to be sufficient to to solve the problems. We want the private sector. And this is what we are going to do next, to work together with the bank to develop ways to enhance partnership in the private sector in several ways, possibly direct financing to medium enterprises and big projects. Particularly, we want to explore a way of de-risking investment, using the bank skills in that, maybe in collaboration with Sasha. We have already started to do that. But that's next, and we should talk about that. Let me try to, I've not answered to your questions, looks like, but I will try to say quickly. We believe in partnership. No? We are very different from the traditional European approach. I will say clearly, it's not what we want. But that does not mean that we don't want to collaborate with European Union. To the contrary, and Lorenzo was saying that we are going to do a summit in which we show that the global gateway is not an alternative to the Mattei Plan approach. Actually, there is the scope to create important partnership. And the other important partnership has to be sought, I believe, on where there are big financial resources. We need to think about the Gulf and try the collaboration with them. And other, I have no political taboos on that. We need to move to be pragmatic and not use the traditional approach, which is just waving the flag of our great principles and idea. But we need to move forward. I've talked too long, and I apologize.
No, thank you very much, Domenico, for a very passionate intervention. And I think I'm retaining the point around a different model and sort of really the synergies that are possible between the bilateral and a multilateral approach. Let me bring in, because you already touched on the private sector, let me bring in Giulio from CDP. And I think obviously you're playing a very important role, because we heard that a key part of the financing is coming from the Italian Climate Fund, and CDP is managing the Italian Climate Fund. But maybe you could sort of highlight sort of some of the private sector initiatives that you are sort of also supporting in the context of the Mattei Plan. I think reference was already made to CRAF. I think the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, AGEA, is another example. So Giulio, you have the floor.
My apologies.
Thank you, Daniel. Yes, I'll maybe, first of all, I'll underline that for an institution like CASA, which has been operational in the development finance since a short time, so we are a young institution for development finance, Africa Development Bank has been very important from us from the start. The first transaction we made in development finance was with you in Africa, in Ghana, for agriculture. In the cocoa sector. But now, of course, with all the tools that the Italian government is giving to us, there is opportunity to work a lot more in many sectors and with different dimensions. Now, private sector, yes, you mentioned the Growing Resilience Platform for Africa. This is an important tool, co-investing tool. So we're talking about equity. Equity through funds, so we're investing together with the African Development Bank and other partners that we are actively chasing, because the target is for a 750 million tool, so it's quite an important one, and we already found a first fund where to invest together. Target is to find another one by year end, so the instrument is alive and kicking, I would say. Then AGEA is another tool. It's well, it's a fund which is promoted by African Development Bank, where the Italian Climate Fund has already approved an investment for 45 million euro, $45 million. Already there'll be other coming for technical assistance or grants for technical assistance. We are preparing the approval process for that. And it's quite important because it's project preparation, project development. So that will be for public-private projects in sustainable infrastructures in Africa. Then I think there will be other opportunities to work together in co-financing. Thinking about the agri-sector, we will be provided with some support by the European Commission for this Terra program, which is focused on the agri-sector in Africa. That's an area where I think we could see some opportunities to partner together. There is another powerful instrument that has been provided to Cassa Depositi e Prestiti by the Italian government, which is the Plafond Africa. Is another tool specifically dedicated to the private sector investing in Africa, and I'm sure that we'll find other opportunities to co-finance together. So I think there is a bright future for a collaboration between our two institutions. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Giulio, and that's very encouraging to hear, including on initiatives such as AGEA, where CDP is really supporting both the Project Development Fund managed by Africa 50, but you're also coming in on the more upstream project preparation support, which will be implemented through another kind of fund at the bank that Italy is already supporting, which is our Sustainable Energy Fund for Africa, CEFA, sort of our largest in-house blended finance platform. So it's very good to see this multifaceted cooperation. I'm cognizant of time. The idea was to maybe give the opportunity for 2-3 quick interventions from the audience, if there's any question or any comment to any of the panelists. If there is sort of any burning question or comment, if you could please raise your hand. We have to be very succinct. We have, I think, 5 minutes time for that before we have to move to the closing of the session. Just trying to see if there's any common question. I know we're quite late in the day. I think here on the third row, if someone can just bring a microphone to the gentleman in the third row. Est-ce que quelqu'un peut apporter un micro? Merci.
Thank you very much for the floor. Well, my name is Luis Ngimbi. I'm the Executive Director representing Angola and Zimbabwe, Namibia, and Mozambique. Well, I thank you for this meeting, which helps us to understand what the Matei plan is. But I'd like just to better understand what really makes it different from the traditional way of cooperation. Because when you speak about funding, we see that when it's funding, there is reimbursement, there is cost, there is. What makes it different? Well, because funding implies partnership. I could not get that real difference. And the second one is there any capitalization in an amount pledged to start? Any amount pledged, the first pledge to start this process? And because when you speak Africa, we're speaking about a continent. It's not just a country. So how relevant it is when we speak about the continent. We're speaking about the continent. And what role it is going to play in partnership with the bank. Is it the fund for guarantee? How it is going to play? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Edie, for that question around how is the Matei plan different, and I think what is sort of the concrete amounts that we are talking about, and I think there are answers to that. I don't know, Lorenzo, if you would like to respond to that question.
Yes, sure. No, thank you for the opportunity. Two things I would say, if I understood well all the question. First of all, how is it different as an approach, and what is the, let's say, the difference in the consistency of funds in respect to before? I would say, first of all, regarding the approach, I mean, Italy has been always very committed to Africa. I always like to underline that the Piano Mattei did not discover Africa for Italy. Italy has always been very close and has had wonderful actors as well in the civil society that have worked for many decades in Africa. And I think that if we are able to actually move so quickly with our partners, with our friends in Africa, it is precisely because there has been a work that has been done for a long time before. The real difference today in respect to before is that Italy is moving as a system. The public sector, the private sector, we're trying to move in a very coherent way with a strategic plan. So it's not small projects that will continue from the aid and development cooperation of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and scattered projects here and there. That's going to continue, but we're trying to concentrate on big projects that can really make an impact on Africa, and we're trying to move all together, all the ministries, all the public sector together with all the private sector, and we're trying to put it together and focusing on different nations in Africa or on strategic projects like Lobito. This is the real difference, talking from an Italian point of view. So they've created a structure where I have the honor to sit that sort of has to make sure that all these different actors are moving in a coherent way, and the structure was built precisely right under the Prime Minister's office, the Prime Minister, who actually governs a governing board that meets every few months during the year to see if the strategy is moving forward. So it's a completely new way of really our partnering with Africa in a completely different way. And I just want to recall what Domenico was saying before about seeing Africa as an opportunity. This has really been the message from our Prime Minister since day one. She said, I want to shed the light on the opportunities in Africa. We're not going to Africa because we want to do aid and cooperation. We want to invest in Africa, and we see the huge opportunities. So it was a very different way of approach. Going on the funding, very quickly, we have announced the 5.5 billion euros in the Mattei plan between the fund for the climate fund and the aid and cooperation money. But I have to say this was the start, and what we tried to do as a government was try to build these new instruments that were just described today in order to leverage those funds. Therefore, in the agreement that we've just mentioned with the African Development Bank, for every euro that the Italian government puts, the African Development Bank puts at least another euro, if not more, in a common pipeline of projects that we study together. So it's leveraging, and this we've done as well with the World Bank, we've done with our partners, as has been recalled, the Emirates are putting their money in this new fund. So the idea is really to try to leverage money from other partners and work together. And I have to say, from my experience since the Mattei plan started, it is usually a question not of the lack of money, but it's more a question of finding the right projects that really attract both the public and the private sectors and are sustainable projects. That's the real challenge. That's why it's so important to have a continuous dialogue with our African partners and trying to understand where it really is important and where the project is sustainable. I hope I answered the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lorenzo. Italy as a system, Italy and the MDBs as a system, I think that's one of the takeaways from the session. Let me invite the alternate governor of Italy for the African Development Bank, Francesco Uttili, to close us out with some closing remarks.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. So we're also fighting with the wind, not only with the gender imbalance, but I will succeed. So it's really a pleasure and a honor to conclude this event. And before closing, let me thank also on behalf of Minister Giorgetti, the Italian Minister of Economy and Finance, who is also the Italian governor of the bank. First of all, I want to thank Monsieur le Ministre, grazie le Ministre Guilherme for having accepted our invitation and for their insightful remarks, as well as Gauthier and David for their support. As very eloquently stated by Lorenzo Ortona, the Mattei Plan for Africa is putting into practice a strategic approach whose objective is to reshape the relations with African countries through a renewed model of cooperation on a peer-to-peer basis. We live in a crucial transition era for multilateralism in which some major countries are repositioning themselves in the international arena. An era in which the African continent is at the center of unprecedented changes, including a multifaceted demographic transition and structural challenges, such as persisting food insecurity and climate change. In this framework, Italy's Mattei Plan constitutes a response whose aim is to design and develop in partnership concrete development initiatives to foster local economic growth and create quality jobs opportunities through a dedicated financial architecture in which the African Development Bank is a key partner of choice. Amongst these instruments today, we have recalled those already designed with the bank, including the Rome Process Special Fund Mattei Plan Financing Facility, which already became operational this year and can start delivering impact and results on the ground, the GRAF facility, and furthermore, we are about to sign a co-financing agreement with the bank that will allow both parties to exchange information on co-financing opportunities, the bank and our National Promotional Bank, Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, on pipeline projects that are requested by beneficiary countries. We are very well aware that all these initiatives are just a starting point. The incremental approach of the plan is a key feature to scale up resources, widen the group of partner countries in the months to come, and deepen partnerships. In this framework, the specific geographical focus of the bank's activity in terms of beneficiaries of its operations, the nature of its shareholding, and the solid relations of the bank with regional and national actors is an added value. Represented by the Ministry of Economic and Finance, Italy is an important shareholder of the African Development Bank and a major donor of the African Development Fund, which was mentioned at the beginning. And we are fully involved in the 17th replenishment negotiations that we resume later this week. Let us recall that the bank is the only AAA financial institution in the continent. To that regard, the callable capital increase negotiated and approved with Italy's support during the 2024 annual meetings in Nairobi was a very strong signal by shareholders certifying the trust towards the institutions and the need to preserve its top rating profile and its financial capacity. Through the direct involvement in the works of Italy's G7 presidency last year, including in the finance track and in the G7 summit, the African Development Bank was a paramount actor in the renewed priority given to Africa. Indeed, some relevant initiatives promoted by the bank resonate very well with the spirit and the objectives of the Mattei Plan for Africa. The Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, AGIA, has been mentioned, a very innovative financial mechanism aimed at mobilizing blended capital to design and develop a $10 billion bankable portfolio of transformative green infrastructure projects in Africa, including with a decisive role of private investments. This was among one of those flagship strategic development initiatives in Africa which were supported and were in the agenda of Italy's G7 presidency in synergy with our African partners, along with the promotion of pharmaceutical regional manufacturing and the partnership also with the World Bank on the resilient and inclusive supply chain enhancement, RISE, to support low and middle income countries in playing a stronger role in the value chains of critical mineral for clean energy products. These initiatives perfectly embody the rationale of the Mattei Plan, where multi-level partnership, public financial resources, and the catalytic role of private capital can generate real benefits and tangible outcomes. In conclusion, we are all aware that the work has just begun. At the same time, we are strongly confident, and I think that this afternoon has enhanced this conviction, that we are on the right direction. The principles that underpin the Mattei Plan, the concreteness of an already ongoing development initiatives, the partnership with several African countries, the depth of the cooperation between Italy and the African Development Bank will generate long-term benefits for our African partners, and we are willing to work together towards this common objective. Let me stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Francesca, for those fantastic closing remarks. And I think obviously take a picture at the end, but let me just conclude. Thank you everyone for your active participation that late in the day. And maybe let me close with one quote of Enrico Mattei, sort of the patron of the Mattei Plan, who said, "Where others see limits, I see possibilities. In that spirit, let's see and seize the possibilities that are there on the African continent." Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.